Out of abysmal trance, her spirit woke, laying on the earth mother's calm inconscient breast. She saw the green-clad branches lean above, guarding her sleep with their enchanted light. And overhead, a blue-winged ecstasy fluttered from bough to bough with high-pitched call. The immense remoteness of her trance had passed. Human she was once more, Earth's Savitri, yet felt in her illimitable change. But soon she leaned down over her love to call. His mind back to her with her traveling touch. On his closed eyelids settled was her still look, a strong delight, not yearning now, but large, with limitless joy, or sovereign last content, pure passionate with the passion of the gods.
Good morning. So we've come to the epilogue, page 715. Last time we were reading the end of book 11, and there Savitri was returning to her body after this long trance in which she had followed the god Death and Satyavan into Death's realm and debated with Death over many cantos, and finally vanquished Death such that his body was eaten by light. And afterwards she was thrust into this higher world, presumably of supermind. And there she encountered another being, a supreme being, who held within himself all the gods. And she recognized him as a transformed form of the god Death. But this was a being of light. But he also tried to convince Savitri to remain in that realm of everlasting light and bliss with the soul of Satyavan, rather than return to earth. But she again insisted that the soul of Satyavan be returned to the earth with her that this was their mission to uplift the earth to light and God. And finally, he consented. And then she descended back to her body on earth. And it was a beautiful fall that we read, and I'll just reread some of that on page 711. So this God of light, this being of light, had prophesied what would come on earth in a life divine. And so there was very high poetry describing this prophecy of the life divine. And then at the top of page 711, it says, the measure of that subtle music ceased. That is his discourse about the life divine. Then down with a hurried, swimming, floating lapse through unseen worlds and bottomless spaces forced, sank like a star the soul of Savitri. Amidst a laughter of unearthly lyres, she heard around her nameless voices cry, triumphing, an innumerable sound. A choir of rushing winds to meet her came. She bore the burden of infinity and felt the stir of all ethereal space. Pursuing her in her fall, implacably sweet, a face was over her which seemed a youth's, symbol of all the beauty eyes see not, crowned as with peacock plumes of gorgeous hue, framing a sapphire, whose heart-disturbing smile insatiably attracted to delight, voluptuous to the embraces of her soul. Changed in its shape, yet rapturously the same, it grew a woman's, dark and beautiful, like a moon night with drifting star-gemmed clouds, a shadowy glory and a stormy depth, turbulent in will and terrible in love. Eyes in which nature's blind, ecstatic life sprang from some spirit's passionate content, missioned her to the whirling dance of earth. Amidst the headlong rapture of her fall, held like a bird in a child's satisfied hands, in an enamored grasp, her spirit strove, admitting no release till time should end. And as the fruit of the mysterious joy, she kept within her strong, embosoming soul, like a flower hidden in the heart of spring, the soul of Satyavan, drawn down by her inextricably in that mighty lapse. So that describes her fall back to her body, carrying the soul of Satyavan with her.
Sailing by at the very top, swimming, floating laps, and then at the bottom, in that mighty lapse.
Yeah, the lapse is this fall back to the physical consciousness. So she's falling down through all these planes from the supermind in which she had encountered this being, the supreme being of light and force. She's falling through all the worlds back to her physical consciousness on earth. So let's begin. We'll read through the epilogue. So, yes, we discussed this last time. So as she's falling through these worlds, it says, it's about 10, 12 lines down, pursuing her in her fall. So following in her fall, there is a face, implacably sweet. A face was over her, which seemed a youth. So here it suggests Krishna. It hints at it only, but it represents this face as a symbol of all the beauty I see not, crowned as with peacock plumes of gorgeous hue, framing a sapphire. A sapphire is a blue stone, but it suggests these plumes, peacock plumes, feathers, are crowning this face, this head, this blue face, whose heart disturbing smile insatiably attracted to delight. So it suggests Krishna, who attracts with his beauty and delight the souls of earth. Yes, this face she sees falling with her, over her. And then that face changes. And it changes to a woman's. So this suggests Kali.
Once Krishna became Kali, love, and Radha used to love Bhujan to Kali, Krishna then came as a Kali. So I think something like that.
Yeah.
Krishna became Kali. I think something is related.
Yeah, there is some close relation between these two forms. A close relation between them, Krishna and Kali. So yeah, I don't know these different stories from the Puranas and so forth, but I did recall that at one time Sri Aurobindo was signing letters Kali. So he was also had identified with her.
Yes, and in the record of yoga.
In the record of yoga.
In many places, the relationship Krishna-Kali is one stage into ascent, in spiritual ascent.
Mm-hmm. So there's a stage of ascent in which Krishna and Kali are represented or experienced. That Kali represents an intense Ananda. Yeah, he describes her, this Mahakali, in the mother, and he also describes her love as kind of the most intense of the mother's love. But it suggests, it's interesting that this Krishna Kali should descend back with Savitri and Satyavan to the earth. And these two gods, I think, are kind of important in perhaps that manifestation of the supramental life on earth. These two beings help to bring that. Sri Aurobindo's realization of Krishna in his physical body on the city day in November 1926 also paved the way for the supramental realization that that descent of Krishna opened the way and was a help in the bringing down of the supramental light and force on earth.
There is another dog, if I can show you, the god of wind, Karuna.
I don't know.
God of wind.
God of wind.
Yes.
Okay. So let's turn to the epilogue. So we need a microphone. Okay, we can start with Sudanya. So beginning of epilogue. We'll read through it once and then return back.
From the top?
From the top.
Oh. Page 711.
Page 715.
715?
That's the beginning of the epilogue.
Okay. Page 715, the epilogue, the return to earth. Out of abysmal trance, her spirit woke, laying on the earth's mother's calm, inconscient breast. She saw the green-clad branches lean above, guarding her sleep with their enchanted life, and overhead a blue wing's ecstasy fluttered from bough to bough with a high-pitched call into the magic secrecy of the woods. Peering through an emerald lattice window of leaves, in indolent skies reclined the thinning day, turned to its slow fall into evening peace. She praised the living body of Satyavan on her body's wordless joy to be and breath. She bore the blissful burden of his head. Between her breast, warm lovers of delight. The working gladness of her members felt, the weight of heaven in his limbs, a touch, summing the whole felicity of things. And all her life was conscious of his life, and all her being rejoiced enfolding his.
Thank you.
You just read? I
Yeah,
think we
we're
did.
reading through.
The immense remoteness of her trance had passed. We did it.
We read?
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering.
Oh, okay. So then we'll discuss. Okay, so we see that she wakes from her trance, lying on the earth mother's calm, inconscient breast, on the forest floor. She saw the green-clad branches lean above, guarding her sleep with their enchanted life. So, and then she sees overhead this blue-winged ecstasy, a bird, a bluebird fluttering, perhaps bringing back to memory this image of Krishna, who she saw falling with her. This bluebird was fluttering from bough to bough with high-pitched call. Yeah, I think here abysmal trance suggests just a very, very deep trance. I mean, she had gone into a very deep trance, encountered this god death, followed him all the way down into the subconscient, inconscient base, which was his realm, and then she went up into supermind. So she was very far from the physical consciousness. Yeah, it's just very, very deep trance. I'm not sure what you're saying. Abysmal means a deep abysm, which is a deep cleft or into something very deep. Also, deep in the ocean is abysm is, so it's a great depth. And so he briefly mentions that the day is thinning and turning to evening. And then it suggests she pressed the living body of Satyavan, so she's holding Satyavan still on her breast. And he's alive. So that confirms she has brought him back to life. And with him brings this intense delight, the weight of heaven in his limbs, a touch summing the whole felicity of things. And then, and all her life was conscious of his life, and all her being rejoiced in folding his. What suggests this kind of deep union and oneness between them. But she's holding his soul in her being. So then we can continue, Margaret.
The immense remoteness of her trance had passed. Human she was once more, Earth Savitri, yet felt in her illimitable change. A power dwelt in her soul, too great for earth. A bliss lived in her heart, too large for heaven. Light, too intense for thought and love, too boundless for earth's emotions, lit her skies of mind, and spread through her deep and happy seas of soul. All that is sacred in the world drew near to her divine passivity of mood. A marvelous voice of silence pressed its thought. All things in time and space she had taken for hers. In her they moved, by her they lived and ran. The whole wide world clung to her for delight, created for a rapt embrace of love. Now, in her spaceless self, released from bounds, unnumbered years seemed moments long drawn out, the brilliant time flakes of eternity.
Thank you. Let's pause. So we see that she has undergone a tremendous change through this experience in her trance, going down into the depths, retrieving Satyavan's soul from the grip of death, and then ascending into this supramental realm, and from there coming back into the body on earth. Human she was once more, Earth Savitri, yet felt in her illimitable change, unlimited. We saw even earlier, before she had descended into death, following Satyavan and the god Death, she had realized already nirvana and the cosmic consciousness. Already she had a great realization. But now something further has occurred in her. You might say perhaps a supramental realization or transformation has occurred.
And her meeting with the three Madonnas, it was before or after?
Yeah, that was before, that was the finding of her soul. So all of that took place just kind of, I think, perhaps that night before or something, his death. But now we see within her these dynamic aspects of the divine. A power dwelt in her soul too great for earth. A bliss lived in her heart too large for heaven. Light too intense for thought, and love too boundless for earth's emotions lit her skies of mind and spread through her deep and happy seas of soul.
And the skies of mind seem to evoke all the different levels of the.
Right, the skies of mind suggest these higher spiritual mind planes. So that light coming from above, perhaps that supramental light, lit up those realms of the spiritual mind. And then she embraces all the world in her consciousness. All that is sacred in the world drew near to her divine passivity of mood. A marvelous voice of silence breathed its thoughts. All things in time and space she had taken for hers. In her they moved. By her they lived and were. So she embraces the whole world in her consciousness. The whole wide world clung to her for delight, created for her rapt embrace of love. It almost suggests the reason for the manifestation of the world, to be embraced in her love.
Her divine, on the other page, the last page, her divine passivity of mood. This I think it's interesting to reflect on it or to see in it.
Yeah, all that is sacred in the world drew near to her divine passivity of mood. Something very attractive in her, which is some kind of beauty and delight, which is passive, not not a kind of transforming force, but an attracting force, an attracting beauty and delight. Yeah, it's just passive, it's quiet, it's Yeah. It's receiving, attracting all that is sacred in the world. There is some kind of state or of being, this passive state of divine delight, and perhaps carries all different qualities in it, peace, kind of a happiness.
Speaks also about the seeds of soul.
Seas of
So
soul.
soul have different levels,
Yeah.
seas, different oceans. Some larger, some less large.
Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps there are different levels of this soul, but her soul is spread out, embracing all others within it. It suggests something like that, and something spread out and embracing all. Spread through her deep and happy seas of soul.
Well, I must say that this concept of soul, of psychic being, is very mysterious to me.
Yeah, it's
sometimes it is defined as a spark of the divine. So it should know entities never born, never dead, and there's infinite. So it should be total, total divinity. But then it seems also that there are the soul evolves with the lives. So some souls are bigger, and that it's very mysterious.
Yeah, it's I would say you're right. It's a soul is a complex concept. We also speak kind of in generic terms of the soul and nature. So something of, but it's representative of the divine, but the divine kind of within or embracing nature, evolving in nature.
Yeah, but it seems, for example, it's divine. So
Yeah.
we meet it. On another hand, sometimes which defines the soul as I don't remember exactly the word, but the place where armies clash and gods and the demons are fighting, or so it seems to be not totally pure and totally powerful and totally.
Well, this much I would say is that it seems to carry within itself the essence of the divine. And it descends in us, in the world. So that essence of the divine, which carries all the potentialities of the divine within it, all the light and delight and force of the divine, it carries within it. But when it descends in us as the soul, those things are not expressed outwardly. It carries it in essence, but then its sort of role or mission is to integrate that essence of divinity with nature. And to slowly, so it does that, slowly evolving, integrating more and more of the nature with itself through many lives, so that it can then express itself in nature. As it integrates, then more and more it expresses itself, rather than holding within itself, kind of in an essential essence, all these qualities, it begins to express them outwardly. So yes, that's the psychic being evolving, growing through the course of lives. So that's the kind of soul personality. It's the integration of nature and soul. So it is a complex concept, I agree. But here she's attracting all the beings in the world with that kind of essential delight, but now expressed in her being, her individual being. We see for her, in her spaceless self, she's also spread out in her consciousness throughout infinity, throughout space, released from any bounds, any limitations, and from time, unnumbered years, seemed moments, long drawn out, the brilliant time flakes of eternity. So she is infinite in her being now. Let's continue.
Out wings of a bird from its bright home, her earthly morns were radiant flights of joy. Boundless she was, a form of infinity, absorbed no longer by the moment's beat. Her spirit the unending future felt, and lived with all the unbeginning past. Her life was a dawn's victorious opening. The past and unborn days had joined their dreams, old vanished eves and far arriving noons, hunted to her a vision of prescient hours. Supine in musing bliss she lay a while, given to the wonder of a waking trance. Half risen, then she sent her gaze around, as if to recover old, sweet, trivial threads, old happy thoughts, small treasured memories, and weave them into one immortal day. Ever she held on the paradise of her breast, her lover charmed into a fathomless sleep, lain like an infant spirit unaware, lulled on the verge of two consenting worlds.
Thank you. It's interesting that we have these kind of references to the dawn, to the morning, again in Savitri. We had at the beginning of the poem the symbol dawn, and that dawn represented perhaps some different things, the beginnings of the physical universe, but also the beginning of a new spiritual awakening, a new spiritual age, perhaps. And at the same time, there was a subtle connection made with Savitri herself, that she somehow represented that dawn, that opening of the new age. So here too, we see that as she's awakening from this trance, well, he'll describe her also in terms of this infinity of time, or rather this eternity of time, this endless past, this endless future, which she sees, or she can kind of experience that in the moment in which she dwells. She feels that unbeginning past and the unending future felt. But she's representing kind of a new something in the course of that eternal time. It's a past that has no end. It just has no beginning. It just goes back eternally. Yeah, it suggests that time is infinite, that there is no beginning, there is no end. Like the divine itself is beginningless and endless. There are no limits to the divine consciousness. Perhaps to its manifestation, there's no limit. We speak of cycles, of yugas, of creations that come and then dissolve and then come again and dissolve, long, long ages. And so we have this sense again of Savitri in the midst of this unending time. Old vanished eves and far arriving noons hinted to her a vision of prescient hours, kind of time that she sees in her prevision. So she's musing in bliss, kind of contemplating all of this experience. And then she begins to look around, and she's recovering again her physical consciousness, her connection with earth and the nature around her. As if to recover old, sweet, trivial threads, old, happy thoughts, small, treasured memories, and weave them into one immortal day. So she's gathering all of that from her physical consciousness, her memories, gathering that into this eternal day. And then she's holding, she feels again Satyavan on her breast, charmed into a fathomless sleep. He's still asleep or in trance, like an infant spirit unaware, lulled on the verge of two consenting worlds. So he's perhaps in between still these worlds, this new world in which he is to awaken, and this world from which he's come out of death, out of his in his trance. Shall we continue?
But soon she learned down over her love to call his mind back to her with her traveling touch. On his closed eyelids settled was her still look of strong delight, not yearning now, but large, with limitless joy or sovereign last content, pure, passionate with the passion of God's desire, stretched, known its wings for all was made, and over reaching of testicle ray like a absolute control of sky on plane, even running down to embrace from all sides earth, a quiet rapture, a vast security, then sighting to her touch of soft wing sleep, rose opening from his flower-like lids and flew murmurs awake. He found her eyes waiting for his and felt her hands, and so the earth is home, given back to home once more, and her made his again, he passions all.
Thank you. Pause there. So now she leans down, looks at Satyavan on her lap, and is calling his spirit back to the physical consciousness, to the earth. to call his mind back to her with her traveling touch on his closed eyelids. Perhaps she's just lightly touching his closed eyelids. And settled was her still look of strong delight, not yearning now, but large, with limitless joy, or sovereign last content, pure, passionate with the passion of the gods. There's something about her look now that's very calm, controlling, powerful, but not yearning, no desire in it, but very strong still. And then Sri Aurobindo uses this beautiful analogy. An overarching of celestial rays like the absorbed control of sky on plain. Heavens leaning down to embrace from all sides earth. A quiet rapture of vast security. It gives some kind of inkling, I think, of the influence and control of the supramental light and power when it descends on earth and takes it into its control. It has this embracing quality, embracing from all sides earth. Mother, I recall describing sometimes her experiences of this supramental light and force coming to her in her sleep or her experiences at night, coming, flooding her being, embracing it from all sides like that, just absolutely entering into her from all directions, totally controlling, absorbing all that she was. So something like that, perhaps. I get the sense of this influence of the descent of supermind on earth, something like that. It's not a kind of impatient, desiring, yearning kind of influence, but something very settled, sees all time in its vision, and has complete control over that unfolding of things in time, and the not unfolding, but the transformation also of the earth. We, in our impatience and in our limited time frames and in our suffering, we yearn for a fast and quick release from this grip of ignorance. But the divine supermind sees in larger spans of time. So it's calm and controlling in its influence. Overarching, it's like an arch over, covering over. We had seen, actually in the end of the last canto, I didn't read at the very end, it had described looking down from this supramental plane on the earth and its light and influence and force kind of leaning down from above. So in a way, that also, that passage, I think, that very last section of the end of Book 11 describes something of this influence from above. But here, Satyavan awakes. He comes back into his physical consciousness, opens his eyes, sees Savitri's eyes waiting for his, and saw the earth, his home, given back to him once more. He realizes he's back in his physical body, and her made his again together with Savitri. Let's continue.
With his arms encircling hold around her locked, a living knot to make possession close, he murmured with hesitating lips her name, and vaguely recollecting wonder cried, "Whence hast thou brought me captive back, love chained, to thee and sunlit walls? O golden beam and casket of all sweetness, Savitri, Godhead and woman, moonlight of my soul. For surely I have traveled in strange worlds, by thee companioned, a pursuing spirit. Together we have disdained the gates of night. I have turned away from the celestial's joy, and heaven's insufficient without thee. Where now has passed that formidable shape which rose against us, the spirit of the voice, claiming the world for death and nothingness, denying God and soul? Or was all a dream, or a vision seen in spiritual sleep, a symbol of the oppositions of time, or a mind-lit beacon of significance in some stress of darkness lighting on the way, or guiding a swimmer through the straits of death, or finding with the succor of its ray in a gully mid the crowded street of chance, the soul that into the world adventure came, a scout and voyager from eternity.
Thank you. So as Satyavan comes back to his physical consciousness, he begins to recollect what has happened to him in this long journey into death. So he asks Savitri about this. Whence hast thou brought me back, brought me captive back? From where have you brought me back? Love chained to you, to thee, and sunlight's walls, O glowing, O golden beam, and casket of all sweetness, Savitri, Godhead and woman, moonlight of my soul. So he realizes that she has brought him back. And then he says, for surely I have traveled in strange worlds, by thee companioned, a pursuing spirit. Together we have disdained the gates of night. So he suggests that they have gone through those gates of night or turned away from them. And I have turned away from the celestial's joy. So he has also, he realizes, has turned back from that heaven of delight in which they had encountered that supreme being in the heavens. And heaven's insufficient without thee. So that too was insufficient, that experience of heaven. And then he asks about death. Where now has passed that formidable shape which rose against us, the spirit of the void, claiming the world for death and nothingness, denying God and soul. So he asks, what has happened to that being, that God of death, that spirit of the void that they had encountered? And then this next sentence, which begins in the middle of the line, right after this description of death and this spirit of the void, he says, or was all a dream or a vision seen in a spiritual sleep, a symbol of the oppositions of time. So he suggests perhaps this was just a dream or a vision, something not quite real. Or a mind-lit beacon of significance in some stress of darkness, lighting on the way, or guiding a swimmer through the straits of death. I think there's a deep significance here of kind of an alternative interpretation of death. a symbol of the oppositions of time. That it's not just, it's not a finality, an end, speaking of death, but a kind of a movement, a facing of opposition, of time, and a passageway, lighting on the way or guiding a swimmer through the straits of death, or finding with the succor of its ray in a gully mid the crowded streets of chance the soul that into the world adventure came, a scout and voyager from eternity. Suggests a passage through time, through the gates of death and birth. Again, a passageway, not a finality. A passage for the soul that into the world adventure came, a scout and voyager from eternity. Here again, this idea of the soul, the divine being, coming into the world adventure, a scout and voyager from eternity. The soul comes from that eternity. It faces the oppositions of time in that passage from life to life, slowly integrating nature with its divine qualities. So he's giving kind of another interpretation, I think, of death here. Understood? You're looking in quizzically, like, I don't know. But she replies, our parting was the dream. We are together. We live, O Satyavan. So she's saying also that that parting was the dream. But now this is the truth, the reality, living together on earth. Excuse me? But she replied, yeah, he's suggesting that passageway or was all a dream or a vision seen in spiritual sleep. So he was kind of suggesting was that experience that they encountered, was that just a dream? I don't know. Yeah. In a way, she seems to be agreeing with him, but she's saying, but she replied, our parting was the dream.
The swimmer through the streams of there, it reminds me to be this green image of the, what's the name of this? The name of this.
This river of death that we must cross. This river of. Yeah, I. Say again. Okay. So she's saying, look round thee and behold, glad and unchanged our home, this forest with its 1,000 cries, and the whisper of the wind among the leaves. So she's saying, this is the reality now. Shall we, well, yeah, I think we can do one more.
But she replied, our parting was the dream. We are together. We live for such a one. Look round thee and behold, glad and unchanged, our home, this forest with its 1,000 cries and the whisper of the wind amongst the leaves, and through rifts in emerald seen the evening sky, God's canopy of blue sheltering our lives, and the birds crying for heart's happiness, winged poets of our solitary reign, our friends on earth, where we are king and queen. Only our souls have left death's night behind, changed by a mighty dream's reality, illumined by the light of symbol worlds and the stupendous summit self of things, and stood at Godhead's gates, limitless, free.
Thank you. Let's pause. So they have come back to the earth, awake on the forest floor, experiencing the wind among the leaves and the cries of the forest, the sounds of the animals and the birds. And then again she says, Only our souls have left death's night behind, changed by a mighty dream's reality, illumined by the light of symbol worlds and the stupendous summit self of things, and stood at Godhead's gates, limitless, free. So again, she suggests that, indicates that they are changed. A mighty transformation has come on them, changed by a mighty dream's reality, by this experience through which they have gone through, this descent into death, this ascent into the heavens of supermind, illumined by the light of symbol worlds. So they have gone up to the summit self of things, the absolute spirit, and stood at Godhead's gates, limitless and free. So,
last verse, stood at Godhead's gates, gives the impression that they stood there at the gate.
but they stood there limitless, free. Yeah, they've gone up to the Godhead. Yeah, perhaps there is a gate, to that realm of the Godhead through which you can pass. But yes, they've encountered that Supreme Being, and He has invited them to stay in that realm, but she has refused and wanted to go back to the earth. But through that experience, they were able to leave death's night behind. She has brought back the soul of Satyavan from death. Okay, let's, I think we stop there for today.
With a new wonder in his heart and a new flame of worship in his eye. What high change is in thee, O Savitri! Bright ever thou wert, a goddess still and pure, yet dearer to me by thy sweet human birth. Earth gave thee, making thee yet more divine. But now thou seemst almost too high and great for mortal worship. Time lies below thy feet, and the whole world seems only a part of thee. My human earth will still demand thy bliss. Make still my life through thee a song of joy, and all my silence wide and deep with thee. All now is changed, yet all is still the same. Still am I she who came to thee mid the murmur of sunlit leaves upon this forest bird. I am the madam, I am Savitri. Let us give joy to all, for joy is ours. For not for ourselves alone our spirits came out of the veil of the unmanifest to fires that burn towards that parent sun, to rays that travel to the original light, to lead man's soul towards truth and God. We are born to draw the checkered stream of mortal life into some semblance of the immortal splendor.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.